You mentioned this RAG acronym. What does that stand for?
Let's say you use ChatGPT as an example of a popular AI program. Right now, it's trained on a very large majority of the internet. OpenAI has taken information from a bunch of different websites and used it to train this bot. And by training it essentially does what word has the highest chance to follow another. So if it reads a bunch of documents on sports from 2000 to 2020, it'll see that the Patriots were the greatest sports team in the history of the world. And that's how it functions. But what the RAG program does is that instead of using ChatGPT trained on the entire internet, you just give it its knowledge base. So it stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation.
So I say to ChatGPT, I don't want you to focus on your whole knowledge base. I want you to focus on these specific documents that I'm providing you.
Exactly.
So you're doing SOX audits. What's an example of this?
One thing that I've built that I think is pretty cool is I've taken the PCAOB audit guidelines and put that into a RAG program. Let's say we feed this bot a scenario. Okay, there's a password control and they don't have these two things enabled. Would that be a problem with the PCAOB? And it'll tell you based on the 665 pages of information, if yes, that would be an issue, or no, it wouldn't be. And then you can ask follow-ups. Okay, but they have this compensating control. Let's say, for example, they don't require an uppercase letter, but they require the password to be at least 15 characters long. Would that satisfy the PCAOB's requirements? And it'll say yes and give a short explanation as to why, or no as a short explanation as to why.
I love that, because what's the alternative? In the past, you would have had to do keyword searches in this document. How would you answer that question?
Typically by going to a senior or a manager.
Somebody who just knows it.
Someone who just knows it, which there's a lot to learn. It can take a long time to know this thing inside and out. So in that case, I think it saves a lot of time. It saves communication time. It saves the length in communication. Once I ask my senior a question, the answers 2 hours later. There's that time. There's also just the time it takes to ask the question and time it takes for them to respond.
So can we see this?
I called it the document querying app.
We can work on that name.
Exactly. We perform testing to make sure that management is adequately reviewing their own users' access to make sure no one has inappropriate access to make changes they shouldn't be making. So a sample question would be, I have a user access review that is not signed off on by management. Would this consider an issue by the PCAOB? PCAOB is the governing body of the SOX audits.
I have a user access review that is not signed off on by management. Would this be considered an issue? And the answer is
yes.
A user access review that is not signed off on by management would be considered an issue by the PCAOB.
And I can ask a follow-up question, such as, what if there is a compensating control? A compensating control would be something along the lines of, oh, they didn't sign off on the user access review, but within the review, they have a list of comments suggesting that they still performed the review.
So in this case, we got the answer. If there is a compensating control in place for the user access review that is not signed off on by management, it may help mitigate the issue, but it is still important for management to provide the necessary sign-off as required by the PCAOB.
So in that case, instead of necessarily being an issue, it might be something along the lines of a process improvement. Again, it would take a couple more iterations to get exactly into it, and I'm not totally sure on a great example of a compensating control for something like that. But yeah, it's pretty quick. It's pretty good. So if I go and ask a question like, who is Tom Brady? Typically, ChatGPT would have a pretty good answer for that.
Right? He's been around for a while. Chances are ChatGPT has come across some blog posts and some news articles about Tom Brady.
It says Tom Brady's not mentioned in the provided context information.
Got it. And so that prevents hallucinations too,